So we had the study called Are You a Natural? And this is also known as the Minnesota Twins Study. And a fun fact about this is I actually have a twin brother, and we're fraternal, and so we're pretty much irrelevant to the study because we're fraternal twins and we were raised in the same environment. But it's still just kind of a cool little connection to this study. And so before class, we passed out these personality evaluations, and so we're just going to take 30 seconds to have everybody fill out their evaluation, and then we'll go over the results in a bit. All right, so 30 seconds are up. Okay, so based off your results, you're going to raise your hands for this. Who thinks that your personality and the results of this study or of this evaluation are more influenced by your environment or your surroundings? All right, and who thinks that they're more influenced by your genes and genetics? Okay, so before the study, if I had to guess, I would have guessed that your surroundings would be more influential in developing your personality, but that is not what they found out. So how does the study affect you personally? This study went to figure out nature and nurture, and not only just the basics of nature and nurture, but how much each plays a role in the development of one's personality. And so this affects you even if you're not a twin, because this study just used twins to determine the degree to which your environment and your genes played a role in the development of your personality. But regardless if you're a twin or not, the environment and your genes still interact on a daily basis to develop your personality and to make you who you are today. So the main takeaways from this presentation, we want you to understand the argument between nature and nurture, and to know which one is stronger in the development of your personality and why this is, and then to also use this information in the future. So the background information on this study was conducted at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis by Bouchard and Lycan, and what they wanted to figure out was the degree to which the environment and your genetics played in the role that they played in determining your personality. And these scientists had a pretty good idea that your personality is a mixture of the two. It wasn't just your genetics or just your environment, but they just didn't know to which extent your genetics and your environment played, and they wanted to see which one was more influential in developing your personality. And so their main research question was nature or nurture, or both. All right, and now Sam is going to go through and tell you about how they conducted this research. If you just click it, it just goes. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so in the study conducted by Bouchard and Lycan, the participants included 56 pairs of monozygotic root-apart twins, also known as MZA twins, from the United States and 7 other countries, as well as an unspecified number of monozygotic twins that were reared together, or MZT twins. The main tools that were used in this experiment were psychological and physiological tests that were used to evaluate the characteristics of the individuals. So Bouchard and Lycan started their experiment by first finding the participants through the Minnesota Center for Twin and Adoption Research database. They then tested the twins to ensure that they were in fact monozygotic. After this was completed, each participant went on to complete 50 hours of testing that evaluated all human dimensions. These tests were carried out by individuals, these tests were carried out individually so that one twin could not influence the other. The tests included 4 personality traits, 3 aptitude and occupational interest inventories, 2 intelligence tests, a checklist of household belongings in order to assess the similarity of their family resources, a family environment scale that measured how they felt about the parenting they received from their adoptive parents, a life history test, and a psychiatric and sexual history interview. After these tests were completed, they then took the results and put them into a database for comparison, and then used the results in order to compute the measurements. And so the measurements that were used in this experiment included the data recorded from the test previously discussed. They then used this information to compute a measurement of how similar the results of the test were for the sets of twins in both the MZT and MZA groups. They also computed a measurement to describe how similar the results were for the MZA and MZT groups. in order to see how much of a role the environment actually played in the different characteristics of the twins. And then just to reiterate again, our research question is, how big of an impact does our genes and our environment have on our personality? And so, to discuss the results of this test, when creating the experiment, Bochard and Lycan hypothesized that they would find that both genetics and the environment played a role in defining who the twins were as a person. They were correct when they predicted this, but what they didn't predict they would find was that genetics played the main role. At the end of the experiment, it was ultimately concluded that genetics determines 65% of our characteristics, while the environment accounts for only 35%. And so this is the chart from the chapter that gives the specific numbers that were found in the study. And if we take a look at the last column, which compares the similarity of the MZA and MZT twins, the number only ranged from 0.784 to 1.21. And then ultimately the mean of all the numbers in this column is 0.947. These numbers are a proof that the genetics plays more of a role than the environment in defining who we are. If genetics were the only factor in determining the characteristics, the result would come out to be exactly 1. This means that the variance in numbers, either above or below the number 1, results from the influence in the environment. Since all the numbers found in this study are generally close to 1, it can be concluded that genetics plays the dominant role. And so the significance of these findings is that the environment does not play as big of a role as society may think it does in defining our characteristics and who we are as a person. There are many qualities that we have that we are genetically predisposed to. In fact, even our career choice may be influenced by our genes. Next, Megan's going to come up and summarize what these findings mean.
Okay, so to summarize what Sam just said, although genetic influences interact with experience to mold a complete human being, ultimately genetic factors appear to account for more of the variance in a variety of human characteristics. To kind of prove my point, for example, monozygotic twins raised in separate and very often different settings grew into extraordinarily similar human beings. This is a landmark study because it contrasts the popular belief that the environment is more influential than your genetic makeup. This discovery can also help professionals understand the behavior of children and allow experts to understand children with behavioral issues. So some criticisms that followed this study. The major one that we had found was from Joseph J. in his study Twin Studies in Psychiatry, in Psychology, Science, and Pseudoscience. Joseph argued that the equal environment assumption, an assumption that monozygotic and dizygotic twins raised in similar environments were raised and developed in identical environments, was not tenable because fraternal twins are treated much differently than identical twins for various reasons such as sex. Therefore, Joseph argued that twin studies did not provide any evidence for genetic influences on human behavioral differences. However, numerous studies and articles refuted this criticism and proved Bochard and Lycan to be correct in their methodological thinking. Here we have a picture of Sydney and Andrew again. I'll let you guess who is who. So some subsequent research. An additional study that aids in Bochard and Lycan's is the role of nature and nurture for individual differences in primary emotional systems. So in this study, 303 pairs of monozygotic twins, 172 dizygotic twins, and 267 non-twin full siblings answered an ANPS 110 question-based scale, an effective neuroscience personality scale. This measured various emotional categories such as seek, fear, care, anger, play, sadness, and spirituality. Each participant marked in each of these regards if they highly disagreed, strongly agreed, or had a middle ground feeling about the issue at hand on a 4-point scale. This study also concluded that personality is heritable. This is a fairly recent study conducted just 2 years ago, and they discovered the same findings as the Minnesota Twins study revealed. It concluded that genetics play a larger role in personality, more specifically in primary emotionality, than the environment does. The 30-year difference between these two studies proves that genetics play a larger role than the environment in personality development. So, why should you care about this study? Although your genetic composition accounts for a majority of who you are, this does not mean you should stop trying to be better. For example, although your intelligence is primarily determined by genetic factors, 30% remains to be subject to increase or decrease due to environmental factors. So put yourself in good environments to study and learn, and make that 30% count. As environmental forces create a stronger influence on differences in a particular characteristic, genetic influences will be weaker and vice versa. So, for starters, food preferences in the U.S. are more likely to be explained by environmental factors because as you grow up, each person is exposed to different and various foods, which leaves room for less genetic forces to function. In contrast, for the most part, everyone has the same opportunity to ride a bike, so their genes are more likely to be dominant in the situation compared to environment because everyone is exposed to the same environmental experience. Therefore, keep in mind that your future children will not be the best at everything they do. Their genes do not predispose them to be great. Don't be so hard on them, but encourage them to keep trying. Also, don't be so hard on yourself. Do your best to expose yourself to environments that enhance your abilities, but realize you're not genetically engineered to be great at everything. Family environments exert less influence over who kids grow up to be than their genes they inherit from birth. However, devoted parents can still influence their children in positive ways. So, as you become parents in the future, keep in mind that your kids still need you to be good parents to them. You still have the opportunity to teach your children good morality and be supportive of whatever they are struggling with. Ultimately, just do your best, put yourself in an environment to succeed, regardless of your genetic makeup. I feel like we need to add a video.
Mm-hmm.
Also, probably